Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is Season 2, Episode 48, The Bible is True, Science. People often confuse science with propaganda and confuse the Bible with myth. In fact, some science is actually bought and paid for by governments or schools to push their particular view or just to receive funding. This is propaganda that is put forward as science. And people accept it because it comes from the government or because it comes from a recognized college or university. Similarly, the Bible is frequently viewed as made-up stories, myths, or legends by religious nuts, when in fact most of the Bible is proven history by reliable sources, and many scientific facts in the Bible have later, centuries later, been proven to be true. Also, in fact, much of modern science actually came about because of the Bible. But I want to read you a quote from a professor at Bar Ilan University, Noah Ephron. He said, quote, "Generations of historians and sociologists have discovered many ways in which Christians, Christian beliefs, and Christian institutions played crucial roles in fashioning the tenets, methods, and institutions of what in time became modern science. They found that some forms of Christianity provided the motivation to study nature systematically." So most people don't realize that science was actually developed in Christian Europe by men who assumed that God created an orderly universe, and thus we could understand it because there was an order to it. If the universe is a product of random chance, there's really no reason to expect order in nature. So many of the founders of the principal scientific fields were believers in this theory. God created things, and recently I might add, and therefore if we study them, we can actually learn about the universe and the God that created it. Bacon, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, Thomas Aquinas, many others. So while not a science book, the Bible actually encourages scientific thought and has never contradicted actual provable science. And in fact, as you'll discover here today, many scientific discoveries have proven the Bible to be correct when it went against the prevailing scientific viewpoint of the day. And I'd refer you back to propaganda. Let's get started. Scientific thought. The Bible encourages it. So seeking truth, actual things that are verifiably accurate, regardless of your political persuasion, truth, is encouraged in the Bible. 2 Timothy 2:15 and 16, specifically referring to studying the Bible, but can be applied to any other field of study as well. It says, "Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. But shun profane and vain babblings." God is encouraging study, finding truth, and ignoring vain babblings, incoherent idiocy. One of the things that is not generally encouraged in religious circles is questioning authority, right? However, the Bible encourages it. Science encourages confirmation of what we hear, the whole scientific method that we test something. It's a test that is repeatable by other people, right? Confirmation that something is true and verifiable by the five senses, right? So not just blind acceptance of whatever we're told. Well, Acts 17:11 said, "These were more noble than those in Thessalonica," referring to the people in Berea, "in that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so." So this was an encouragement of the lay people, the normal everyday person in the congregation, to search the scriptures, not blindly accept what Paul and Peter were telling them. You need to find out if it's accurate. So we're talking the scriptures, the ancient Old Testament scriptures. They were encouraged to search those to look if, number one, if they were told the truth, and to learn themselves to understand the things of God. So we are encouraged as believers to confirm the things we hear, basically to search for truth, right? And of course, we're told that we can learn about God by learning about his creation. Romans 1 verse 20, for the invisible things of him, of God, from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. God encourages us to study nature so that we can understand things about God. So when he created things, it was so that we could learn in an orderly manner different things about our Creator. So science is actually encouraged in the Bible. Understand throughout the whole Bible, it encourages people to seek truth, seek knowledge, be wise, understanding of facts, and how to use them properly is throughout the whole Bible considered something that is very precious and desirable. That's science, right? Proverbs 23:23, buy the truth and sell it not. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding. You see, the Bible teaches love of learning. God expects us to be wise and to learn. Proverbs 18:15, the heart of the prudent gets knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. God expects us to strive to be unbiased, impartial in our knowledge and wisdom, just like pure science ought to be. Not to prove your political viewpoint or to gain funding or to get rich or whatever. It ought to be unbiased. James 3:17, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. The whole point of searching for truth is to have an impartial, unbiased opinion of what really is, and to be able to discern between good and evil. So the scientific method is actually encouraged in the Bible, not blind faith. So understand that God created order and logic. Literally, Jesus is logic. He is the Word. Now, this comes from the word logos in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The Greek word for that is logos. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. The word for this is logos, which is where we get logic. God, Jesus Christ, is logical, and the spoken word, we find out later he actually helped create the earth by his word, but it's deeper than that. Logic, logos, actually refers to not just the words, but the thought process, the logic behind you speaking in a reasonable manner. We'll cover that a little bit more in 1 Peter 3:15 here in a second, but I want to point out that Jesus himself expected his disciples to use their five senses to discover and learn. You know, the whole idea of what we can perceive with our senses in science, to test things, to discover things, right? Being able to see, touch, hear, smell, and taste, using your senses to understand reality. That's what science is, right? Matthew 11:4, Jesus answered and said unto them, go and show John again those things which you do hear and see. Now we're talking about miracles, but he was asking them to prove to John that Jesus Christ was actually from God. So scientifically, empirically, what you hear with your ears, what you see with your eyes, Jesus was encouraging people to use their five senses to test whether or not he was actually God. Empirical evidence, right? Now let's look at 1 Peter 3:15. God expects us to use reason and logic when explaining things to people. The verse says, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. Give an answer is actually the word apologia, which means answer. It's where we get the word apologetics. It is a reasoned argument or justification of something, a clearing of doubt. isn't this exactly what science is? Reason, arguments that actually give justification for how something is. And then the word that for reason, where it says to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is within you, that's the word logic again, which literally is the word logos, a reasoning conducted or assessed according to strict principles of validity. Something said, including the thought, the mental faculty or motive, and by extension, the computation on how you got to those words that you used. It's all very scientific and precise, and God expects us to use that when we discover things about God through the universe that he created, and when we talk to people about who he is. The whole scientific method is based off of order and logic of the universe that God himself put in place and backs up in the Bible. So to say the Bible is unscientific is just to be ignorant of the things in the Bible, let alone the things that Jesus said. But let's look at some of the scientific discoveries, the theories and principles, the overall far-reaching implications and things that are said in the Bible, okay? We'll cover a couple of those, and then we will get into some specific discoveries that have been made because of the Bible. First of all, I want to look at the principle in science of the law of biogenesis. It's the idea that living things can only come from living things. It was hypothesized in 1688 by Francesco Redi, in 1799 by Spallanzani, and then in 1858 it was put in writing by Rudolf Virchow, and in 1860 Louis Pasteur. This idea of biogenesis, that things can only come from living things, was contrary to the scientific thought of the day, which was the law of spontaneous generation. They believed that rats, bugs, mice were generated from decomposing things, rotten foods, piles of dirty, moldy clothes, etc. This dates back to the time of Aristotle. They thought that microorganisms, mold, etc., generated from non-living, decomposing things, as opposed to coming from a parent organism. They obviously, did not understand the microscopic details of things. So this was just assumed that things spontaneously generated out of rotten things. That goes completely against what the Bible teaches. God created everything. Genesis 1:11 through 25 clearly states several times that living comes from living. Okay, verse 11, God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth," and it was so. So plants, growing things, fungus, comes after its own kind from a parent organism, not spontaneously out of other things. Verse 21, "And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good." Again, after their kind, not just from decomposing items, but from a parent organism. Verse 25, "And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, mice, cockroaches, tiny insects, mites, etc., after their kind. And God saw that it was good." So the Bible, from the very first book, actually contradicted the law of spontaneous generation. And you can Google it. Up until the 1800s or late 1700s, that was the way everyone expected things to happen. Until, of course, we discovered the microscope and started looking at things and realizing, oh, everything actually comes from, its own kind, its parent organism. Amazing, the Bible was right. All right, what about the flat earth theory, right? This one is very interesting. There's a historical note here. The church fathers did not actually teach the earth was flat. Aristotle taught the earth was a sphere back in the 3rd century BC, okay? 384 to 322 BC was when Aristotle was alive and taught that. Jeffrey Russell is a professor of history at the University of California in Santa Barbara. He says in his book, Inventing the Flat Earth, that through antiquity and up to the time of Columbus, nearly unanimous scholarly opinion pronounced the earth spherical. Russell says there's nothing in the documents from the time of Columbus or in early accounts of his life that suggests any debate about whether or not the earth was round. This guy believes a major source of the myth came from the creator of the Rip Van Winkle story, Washington Irving, who wrote a fictitious account of Columbus's defending a round earth against misinformed clerics and university professors who were afraid he would fall off the edge of the world, right? But Russell says the flat earth mythology flourished most between 1870 and 1920 and had to do with the ideological setting created by struggles over evolution. He says that the flat earth myth was an ideal way to dismiss the ideas of a religious past in the name of modern science. So basically, the idea of flat earth being taught by the churches was an idea that came about just to discredit the churches when evolution came up. So I want to show directly from the Bible that the earth is a sphere and then what people argue against it with, okay? So Isaiah 40 verse 22, it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. Another one is Proverbs 8:27. Proverbs says, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass, or circle, or circuit, used in multiple places in the Bible, when he set a compass upon the face of the depth. In Job 26:7, it says, he stretched out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. Job was written like 3000 BC, well before people came up with the idea of, Atlas holding up the earth and stuff like that. Job said that the earth hangs on nothing in space. And then taken with the rest of the Bible, Psalms, Proverbs, Isaiah, etc., it's clearly the idea that like a globe hanging in space, which was without any scientific backing back in those days when this was written. Psalm 103 verse 12, as far as the east is from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us. So on a flat earth, east to west is a measurable distance. At some point, the earth ends. Nobody says the flat earth is infinite and goes on forever and ever. So east to west would be a measurable distance. But on the globe, if you go east, you will always be going east. You will never end up going west. That is an infinite distance that God has removed our sins from us. Now that, from an infinite God, is pretty cool, especially considering that that is clearly a reference to a globe, because had he used north to south, that would be a finite distance. You keep going north until you hit the North Pole, and now you're going south, so you'd be able to measure that distance again. So even in the book of Psalms, it's a reference to a globe to tell us that God has gotten rid of our sins. Now, some verses that flat earthers use, I just want to cover those real quick, is Revelation 7 and verse 1. After these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east. This is clearly a reference to the winds. They had angels for each of the winds, and the wind comes from 4 directions, north, south, east, or west. So it's a reference to the 4 angels holding the 4 winds, so that the winds can't blow from any direction. There's only 4 cardinal directions. It is not a reference to there are corners on the earth and there's 4 angels holding it up. That's not at all what it says. You have to read it in context. And then, of course, he clearly gives you in the very next verse, one of the angels from the east. So one of the 4 directions to prove what I just said. There's other places where it says the 4 corners of the earth too, in Revelation 20, verse 7 and 8. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 quarters of the earth, or the 4 corners, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And then in Isaiah 11:12, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gathered together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So flat earthers will say the Bible teaches, the earth is a square, right? Well, first of all, nowhere in history has that been really considered. When people believed in a flat earth, it was a round flat, not a square. That's not even part of this. The point is, the four corners of the earth is an idiom. It means over all the earth. To try and say that this means the earth is a square and there's four corners and the earth is flat is to completely misunderstand context and what an idiom is. An idiom is a commonly used phrase in your language. Okay, so that's like when I say, oh, he pulled my leg. That's an idiom. Anyone who speaks English understands that I mean he was joking with me. He pulled one over on me. He was teasing me or whatever. But someone from another language might think that you're pulling my leg means someone grabbed my leg and yanked on it, trying to pull it off my body. Well, that's a misunderstanding of an idiom. And that's not that the person who said that was wrong in saying it. It's that you are ignorant of that idiom. Okay, so if you think when I say, oh yeah, I searched the four corners of the earth, that I'm saying it's a square, you are ignorant of what the four corners of the earth means. That's all that is. Now, there's also the ends of the earth that's used 28 times, clearly another idiom, which means all-encompassing. It's not referring to the edge of a planet, the end of the earth, okay? The same expression, end of the earth, is used for people. So it clearly can't refer to the edge of the planet Earth. Isaiah 45:22 says, look unto me and be you saved, all the ends of the earth. Well, the earth isn't looking to God to be saved. It's the people in the earth. So it's clearly an idiom talking about all encompassing everyone there, or in all directions, everywhere on the earth. It has nothing to do with a scientific viewpoint of the shape of the planet. Okay. That's my point. Now, the other thing, which I think is really cool, because I really like the study of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics states that the entropy of the entire universe as an isolated system will always increase over time. So entropy means a gradual decline into disorder. If that gradual decline increases over time, then eventually you're going to reach nothingness. It's going to be complete disorder and chaos, and nothing works. It's the idea of entropy is that you have this loss of order or usable energy. You can't go back, which, by the way, this undisputed law of thermodynamics in the scientific world completely contradicts the idea of evolution, that things get better over time. But anyways. All right, so the Bible verses that explain this concept is Isaiah 51:6, Psalms 102:26, and Hebrews 1:11. They all say that the earth will wear out like a garment. This is precisely what the second law of thermodynamics says. Everything is running down, wearing out. Energy is becoming less and less available for use. The suns are burning out. The stars' orbits are decaying, etc., etc. Isaiah 51:6. Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look upon the earth beneath, for the heavens shall vanish away like smoke, and the earth shall wax old like a garment, and they that dwell therein shall die in like manner. So the Bible, while not a scientific book, is clearly full of scientific understanding and principles well before their time. Next time, we're going to get into the specific scientific discoveries that came about because of the Bible. And then we'll talk about historical and archaeological discoveries that came about because of the Bible. I really wanted to kind of do this intro on the Bible and science so you get an idea that the Bible actually encourages scientific thought and is in fact the reason for most of modern day science. I hope you enjoyed it. Please email me, angrypatriot42@yahoo.com, if you have a scientific question or something that might be found in the Bible. or even if you have a suggestion for some scientific thing that has been discovered because of the Bible. I would love to incorporate that into the next podcast. And until next time, may God bless you all.